Welcome to Off the Post, powered by Coverall Exteriors. I'm Russ Cohen. We've got Anthony Mingione, and how are you?
Doing all right, Russell. Kind of a miserable day weather-wise here in Philly, but I think we're gonna have a good conversation today. How about you?
Not so great, but it's good inside. And we have Michael Jello. Mike, how are you?
Misery loves company. It's raining in Buffalo. Wonderful.
Well, and you're wearing a sweatshirt in the summer. I mean, you should know better.
Well, there's air conditioning in the house, and I'm in the basement, Russ. So
Sure.
He's in the studio. He's in his studio.
And we have a really special guest. We have Bill Clement, two-time Stanley Cup champ, Hall of Fame broadcaster, and terrific player. Bill, how are you?
I'm great. It stopped raining for a little bit here. I live 4,000 feet up on the side of a mountain in the Blue Ridge Mountains in North Carolina.
Oh, wow.
That's where I moved to in the Smoky Mountains when
I've been through
retired.
there.
And my wife and I said, what do we want? And we said 4 seasons. We love the leaves changing.
Yeah.
We like nice climate, wanted a view, like friendly people. And we found it. Here it is.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So, Bill, I wanted to ask you about Fred Shero. I was young when the Flyers were winning, but I was watching hockey.
So was I, just for the record.
Okay. So we're on the same
I was
page.
12. I was the youngest guy in the history of the NHL to win a Stanley Cup. But go ahead.
And then I saw him with the Rangers and that Stanley Cup run. And so my question is, he was big into video, which again back then was unusual, but also in puck possession. And really, that's something where I think the youngins now think that was sort of just invented with data analysis, but really that was something he seemed to stress as a coach too. If you could talk about that, that would be great.
I would never throw Freddie under the bus because I loved the man. Freddie loved his beer. And I will tell you, and that's no secret, right?
No.
I mean, as his career progressed, but the VCR that we had in this little room next to our Flyers locker room was where they stored Schaefer beer.
Schaefer, great.
And it didn't matter to Freddie. So Freddie would park himself in front of the VCR and sip Schaefer beer. But he was definitely a student of the game. And, puck possession, I'm not sure where that rumor got started, but we wanted the puck. But Freddie's rules were if you get to center ice and you don't have a 3-on-2 or a 2-on-1 or a breakaway, dump the puck in. So in today's game, that's considered a turnover, right? When you dump it in, let somebody else pick it up. But even then, well, the rules have changed. So defensemen don't have to fear having their face smooshed up against the glass.
True.
But everybody else did, and we forechecked like demons. So there was a lot of dump and chase in Freddie's system. So including against the Bruins in the 74 finals, it was like dump the puck in the Bobby Orr's corner. We're like, what? Say what? He said, look, you guys know how to forecheck. Make him pass the puck, eliminate him, don't let him back in the play. And Bobby confided in Joe Watson when the series was over. He said, I was dead. They played Bobby about 35 minutes a game.
Sure.
I would have played him an hour, like 60 minutes a
game. Yeah.
Because he was so dynamic. But now Freddie wasn't all puck possession.
Okay.
Yeah.
Bill, I mean, growing up, certainly when I first started watching hockey in the mid-'80s, when people speak of the voice of Flyers, obviously they would speak of Gene Hart. But for me, it spoke to me in the voices of you and Mike Emmerich. And then later you reached millions of American viewers working with the great Gary Thorne.
Yeah.
Both of them had very distinct ways of calling a game. I mean, Mike would practically punctuate every shot. Gary was like more operatic in nature. He was perfect when you had a game 6 or a game 7, something's on the line. What did you learn from working with them, and how did you have to adapt to their way of calling a game?
That's a really interesting question, because my audition with ESPN, which is how I got my start, was I was a full-time actor, and my wife was a full-time actress. We were paired up to read as husband and wife on an audition in Atlanta for a National Blue Cross Blue Shield commercial audition. And we didn't get the commercial, but we fell in love and married, and we moved to New York, and we were auditioning our asses off for rent and lunch and everything. People said, well, what do you mean you were an actor? I said, okay, for every one of those people that you see in a full-time television series or in movies, there are 5,000 of us out there looking to make it.
Right.
So I was sitting at home one day in New York in a little apartment in Queens, and the phone rang one day, and it was ESPN calling, and they said, "Would you like to audition for one of our jobs as color analyst?" Because Brad Park had left to go back to coach the Detroit Red Wings, and the thought of a regular paycheck really appealed to me. Call me crazy, but call me crazy. So I said, "Sure, that'd be great." I said, "What does the audition consist of?" And they said, "Live game on the air." And I swallowed hard and said, "Okay." And then I talked to the executive producer after that phone call, and I said, I need a plan for everything. I would have been a decent coach because I needed a plan for everything. And I said, what do you want me to be? Who do you want me to be? And he said, "We want you to educate the uneducated hockey fan without offending the educated fan." And I said, "No problem." I went to work, and I had 5 kind of scenarios that I would introduce, such as, "Well, that was a great job of standing up at the blue line." And I don't mean just not falling down at the blue line, when you give them less time. So, like something like that. And I did the Minnesota North Stars at Chicago in the Chicago Stadium. They delivered a gift to do a game in Chicago Stadium. Like,
with that anthem, right? I mean,
well, that's before the game.
Before the game, yeah. But
I was being evaluated not on Frank Pellico at the pipe organ, just so you know.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, call it crazy, but I thought they'd handed me a gift because Chicago Stadium was electric all the time and always noisy. So I got the job, and my first 5 games, I worked with 5 different play-by-play guys. And in my career, I worked with 32 different play-by-play guys. Ooh. But wow. ESPN settled on Doc, on Mike Emmerich, and we went to work at being partners. And one of the keys to being successful as an analyst or as a play-by-play person is the ability to be spontaneous, right? You don't get together before the game and plan what you're going to say, and you hope that you can build on one another. Excuse me. And that was Doc, and it was definitely Gary. Gary and I didn't talk about anything before the game. Gary kind of did his own thing and called his own game, and it worked. I had so much respect for Gary. His passion for his call and Doc's passion for their call. Like they both had the ability to like bring people out of their chairs at home, right? On a goal call or any kind of call. Yeah. So I worked with Doc for 7 years. I think I worked for Gary for 8 years. And I'd be remiss if I didn't mention Jim Jackson, who I worked for the last 7 or 8 years on a handful, 20 games a year. Jimmy was so dedicated. These guys are so dedicated. And I just came back from the Flyers fantasy camp, and the fantasy players ask all kinds of questions. And here's what nobody realizes unless they're told. The broadcast positions now, they weren't in Boston Garden and Chicago Stadium and Detroit. The broadcast positions are the worst seat in the freaking building.
True.
The worst seat. And I couldn't see shit. And my play-by-play partners would have to call the play as it happened. Color analysts got it easy. We come in after the fact, right? We kind of come in after the fact. So we had it so easy. I have such homage for the play-by-play artists because they are in nowhere space trying to call a game when the numbers look like that big, right. So, I mean, Gary and Doc and Jim Jackson, and I had other great partners, not for long, but it was a thrill to work with them. I knew that they would be prepared. I knew that they would have a passion for that game we were calling, even in the third period when one team's up 7-1, and our producer would say, "Okay, boys, don't lose your energy. Come on now, more energy, more energy." So it's not easy, as you guys know, right? It's not easy. But I was gifted to be paired with, for the most part, 3 great play-by-play artists.
Bill, sometimes people think it's actually glamorous. You're a reporter and you're in the press box, or I can say, like, for covering an American Hockey League game a few years ago, I covered a game in Hamilton at Copps Coliseum. It's a different name now. and you walk out on this corrugated metal sheets.
Catwalk. On the catwalk.
Which I was scared to death of, and you're over the seats, and then you walk into a gondola and they're playing like some music and it's rocking and shaking.
Yeah, Pacific Coliseum was
so
like
that's when you started to shake your little tush on the catwalk, right?
That was when I was getting into the elevator and going down. Now I wanted to
by the way, I've called games out of cops.
Yeah.
Like, you know, when I did American League games, like when the NHL locked out way back when and ESPN2 came on, they needed programming. I loved going to the minor league cities, but continue. Hamilton was great.
Yeah. Going down memory lane here, the 75 Flyers held a special place in the hearts of people in Buffalo. Because that was
really
that was the closest that this team, even though they got to 6 games in '99 against the Dallas Stars, nobody thought that, at least I didn't think, they had a chance of beating Dallas in that series. But in '75, with the French Connection, with that team, a lot of people thought that was the best team and they had the best chance to win.
Except they had to face us.
Yes, and well, that was the thing.
I'm serious. I mean, that was the block. That was so. So finish your thought. But
I was going to say. I mean, we know how good that Flyers team was, and we know how good that Sabres team was with the French Connection, with the second line of Ramsey, Luce, and Gare. They had good players like Schoenfeld and Korab on defense. But my assertion is, even though I was 8 years old, but I watched later on, was the difference in that series, as good as the two teams were, was Bernie Parent, was the fact that Parent was in goal for the Flyers, and I think it was Jerry Desjardins and Gary Bromley in goal for the Sabres.
No, it was Roger Crozier.
Roger Crozier too. I know they had 3 goalies that year, but that was the big difference in that series.
I think it was more than that.
Okay.
So first of all, that was Buffalo's 5th year in the league. They'd never won a game in the Spectrum.
No.
And I will always believe that our tough guys were really tough. And I don't want to disparage anybody, but the Sabres tough guys were pseudo tough. Correct. Jim Schoenfeld, I will exclude from that grilling, because Shoney was as tough and as great a gladiator as I've ever played against.
For sure.
But when it came right down to it, we intimidated, I think, the Sabres. But here's another factor. We finished with 113 points.
Right.
So did the Sabres. So did Montreal. And the Sabres always had Montreal's number, and Montreal always had our number, it seemed. They would come in, and Brian Engblom, who actually is coming to visit. Brian's never been to our home in the mountains, and Brian Engblom played for the Canadians. I broadcast with him on the Versus Network. And Brian always said it best. He said, we always knew there was a problem when our bus, when I played for the Canadians, would pull in under the Spectrum. The big door would come down behind the bus. The bus driver would turn off the bus, and it would still be shaking. So we knew what we were up against. But Montreal always, and Doc always would say, they're bloodied but unbowed. The Canadians played us tough. But the Sabres always had their number. So 3 of us finished with 113 points. And fortunately, I think for us, the Sabres knocked Montreal out in 6 games that year. And we played Buffalo. And unlike the season before, when we hadn't won a game in Boston in 7 years, and we needed to win one in Boston, we were confident, not cocky, but confident that if it took 7 games, because we had home ice in 75, that if it took 7 games, we'd win in 7 games. And I think the Sabres kind of knew that too. And the French Connection line destroyed Montreal. And the French Connection line played hard against us. But Eddie Van Im was a killer on our blue line. Boy, he intimidated people. He speared. He used his stick. He couldn't skate. But back then, it was a game of swordsmen. It wasn't like it is today, right? It was an absolute game of intimidation. So I think in our hearts of hearts, we knew that if it took 7 games, we would win. So we had just survived the Islanders in 7 games, and that was their coming out party.
It was, yeah.
Right? So, but I think we knew that if it took 7, we'd be okay in 7.
And you were up 3. You were up 3-0 in that series, and the Islanders came back and won the next 3, and then you won in Game 7, from if memory serves.
Well, when we beat the Islanders in Game 7, it was the 9th time they had faced elimination in the playoffs. They had to play a preliminary round. They lost the first game against the Rangers, then won 2. Then they played the Penguins. They lost 3 and then won 4. They played us. They lost 3 and then won 3. It was like, holy shit, will these guys not die?
Right.
Like, come on, man. But, that was the Islanders coming out party. You could tell that they had the makings. Bill Torrey was a great general manager. So the Islanders were putting themselves on the map. No question.
Yeah. Bill, you've watched a lot of hockey. So Mike,
You think?
I think. And so like over the years, you've seen how the game has changed and progressed. And so I wonder, like, what do you think about the speed of the game now? Just what it looks like to you.
Well, those are 2 questions. The speed is unparalleled. It's like Daytona 500 and the Indy 500 all put together. Sadly for me, when I watch a lot of games, they all look the same. The coaching is similar. The play is similar. There's quite a bit missing from back in the day. It's still a game of intimidation, but not as great a game of intimidation because the tough guys, the enforcers, can't do what they used to be able to do. And there are fewer enforcers. When people say, well, why do they call them enforcers? And I said, well, because they enforced a code of conduct on the ice. We're the only sport where somebody that's 5'8" and weighs 150 is going into the corner with somebody 6'4" and weighs 240. Right. And the ref can't say to the big guy, you can't hit him like that, right? You're at risk no matter what you do. So the game has evolved into, fortunately, but the game looks the same to me a lot. And I wish the role of the enforcer, and it still crops up, like, okay, maybe in the Four Nations tournament, when the 2 Kachuk brothers just said, screw this.
Right.
2 consecutive face-offs. They challenge, they drop the gloves. I mean, there's such an appeal for that. It's the sponsors that wanted fighting out of the game because they're selling Tide soap to mothers and their kids. And I get that. But there was such an element of, and there was an aura about the game about what's going to happen now. And I miss that. Of course, I'm an old timer, but I will say this. I applaud the NHL because the revenue keeps going up and up and up, even though the game has changed. And I might not find it as appealing. Somebody does, right? Sponsors do, fans do. So Gary Bettman is a little genius. And I remember Ed Snyder telling me the story one day. The owner of the Flyers passed away. Almost everybody knows the name Ed Snyder. Yep. I had lunch with him, 20 years ago. And he said he was one of the 5 owner search committee members that were supposed to sponsor in a candidate, right, to become the commissioner of the NHL in 1993. And Ed said, my guy was the number 2 guy at the NBA. And I said, great. I said, what happened? He says, I got a call the night before the interviews, and David Stern says, I'm not sending my number 2. I'm sending my number 3. And Ed said, who the hell is that? Nobody knew. He said, I'm sending Gary Bettman. And Ed went, Ed said, I said to myself, oh, no. Like, I'm on the search committee, and I got the number 2 coming. I don't even know the number 3. And Ed Snyder said, from the time Gary Bettman sat down, you got to remember, social media was just popularizing, right, in 1993. And so many other elements of the digital world were not even in play. And he said, from the time Gary Bettman sat down, we did a 2-hour interview. From the time he got up, we were all like, what? And he just wowed the owners. He is so bright, so strong, so driven, that the reason the NHL is the way it is today, which is successful, and he had to cancel the season because without cost certainty, all the small franchises would have gone poof.
Oh, yeah.
Right? They would have gone poof. So anyway, yeah, the game has changed, but it's still growing, and there's going to be expansion, I believe.
Oh yeah.
And Gary Bettman deserves 90% of the credit for
Yeah,
everything.
and expansion probably to Houston and Atlanta, where you played a number of years
Yep.
with Flames, Bill. So I mean,
Yeah.
just quickly, what do you think of a third crack in Atlanta after?
I'll tell you what, it can't miss if it's done right. Our team averaged 10,000 people a game. We couldn't win a game in the playoffs. We had good teams. And our owner, Tom Cousins, was a real estate developer, and things were kind of sliding. And he saw an opportunity to sell the team and to do well and to recover and to do what he did best was real estate development. So he sold the team to Nelson Scalabania in Calgary, who mortgaged all of the rights for television and everything. So we didn't fail there. Back in the day, in 1980, 10,000 people a game would make you, if not profitable, you wouldn't be broke. When the Thrashers went there, new building, mismanaged. Here's the biggest problem in Atlanta. An arena can't make it downtown.
Yeah.
It can't. There's no rapid transit from the north. The money is all on the north side of Atlanta.
Yeah.
So if they can build an arena in Roswell or Alpharetta or where the whole population is boomed, people have money, Northerners there, hockey. There's no question in my mind that hockey will succeed in Atlanta if the building is in the right place and if the team isn't mismanaged. I mean, you can have a gift handed to you. If you screw it up, it's going to fail.
Right.
Right? It doesn't matter. So I think that this Houston, Houston's funny. Mark Howe and I have been on a couple of group delivery stage keynotes, whatever. And my son lives in Houston now. But the Houston Aeros, Houston is a natural. I think Houston's a natural.
Yeah, I went to college there. I think you're right. There's a lot of transplanted people there now too.
Well, the NHL is trying to find markets that are sizable where there's no NBA, NFL, or Major League Baseball competition. That's hard to find now.
Yeah, it's hard to find.
Right? You might want to go into a major market and cut your niche in that market. So there's no question that whatever Gary Bettman does, I'm a huge fan of his business decisions. Huge fan.
Bill, just to wrap up, I know, as you said, you're living down in North Carolina now, and I would be remiss if I didn't ask you about your work with the Arc of Haywood County and how people can help.
Well, thanks so much. I really appreciate that. We have a daughter that has Down syndrome, and I was invited to be on the board of the Arc. The Arc is now capital A, small r, small c. At one point, not that long ago, was capital A, capital R, capital C, which stood for the Association of Retarded Citizens. And that's kind of fallen out of favor in the political correct world, as it should have. So the Arc of Haywood County is an incredible organization. I'm on the board. Our daughter, it's funny, I just drove her back to her group home today. She came, it was her birthday yesterday. She turned 51. That should tell you how old I am. And I drove her back to her group home, and she was so excited to get there. If anybody Googles the Arc, A-R-C, of Haywood, Haywood County, our website will come up. And it's funny, I just sent an email to all of my neighbors in our development. There are only 32 homes in our development, but I just wanted to forward our newsletter and say, if you'd like to contribute or be a monthly contributor, no matter how small or so big or how big, we would really appreciate it. It's and with the changes in Medicaid, and we don't know where funding for the less fortunate is going with the, with the state of the federal government, and we're scared to death. So we're doing our best to try to beat the drum a little bit and say, if you can help us stay alive, and to give here's the deal about a group home. Medicaid supplies us with subsistence money. Our group home coordinators have to decide whether they have enough money in a month, and we let them make those decisions. They run the group homes. Can we buy fresh vegetables, or do we have to buy canned stuff? Can we take them for haircuts? Can we go to the park? Can we take them on a little 2-day trip for a summer vacation? All that stuff is outside of Medicaid. So we work really hard at fundraising and really hard at trying to help the world. help the ADD community, individuals that have disabilities, intellectual or physical disabilities. And yeah, thanks for mentioning that. I really appreciate it. I didn't know you were going to do that, but thank you so much for mentioning that. It's a labor of love for all of us that have, sons, daughters, brothers, sisters in that ADD community. So thank you so much.
We'll put a link up on social media too. We'll try and help out a bit. But Bill,
thank you.
Thanks a lot for coming on. We appreciate it. It's been a thrill. You gave us some great insights and things I'd never heard before. And as we get older, it's hard to find things we've never heard before. So thanks.
I got a lot more if you want to have me back.
Sure, we'll have you
Absolutely.
back.
Absolutely.
I'm all yours. Thank you, guys.
Okay.
Thank you, Bill. Thanks for coming on with us.
You bet.
Wonderful.
Bill Clement. That was awesome.
Bill Clement, the legend.
Yeah. We all grew up watching him, and I watched him play. We all listened to him after, and yeah, he's a smart guy. Always was a smart guy, like very sharp. All right. So Mike, Victor Olofsson signs a 1-year deal, $1.5 million, I think it was.
Yep.
I think we all said 1-year deal. I'm not sure, but I know I did.
Yeah.
I did. Yeah. I mean, just too
He's
good of
a
a
power
player
play
for
guy,
him to
no matter
not
what.
be with an NHL team. I mean,
Colorado seems like this team now. Like for a couple of years, I was high on them. Now they're a team that's literally just trying to fill in the cracks every year, and it's hard to stay competitive that way.
this is kind of how they have to do it, and they have to be, even with an expanding cap, they still have to be conscious of future deals. In some ways, I don't want to kind of equate them to kind of like what Howie Roseman was doing with the Eagles, but there's a lot of money that's been sunk at certain positions, and you kind of have to get by sometimes, at least for a couple of years or so, with certain players that might be considered replacement level. But Olsen, I think, is a little better than a replacement level player.
I mean, okay, everything in Colorado is mitigated by Cale Makar and the contract that's going to come up next summer. So, everything is going through that filter, that window. And that's why they traded Rantanen, because they didn't want to spend $12 million on him. And then, obviously, that's going to be probably the same thing with Neckish. He's going to want big money if he has another big year, and they're probably going to end up trading him or letting him walk. I saw the Olofsson signing as a replacement for Jonathan Drouin, as basically depth forward who could play second power play. And and I knock on wood, I hope that this doesn't happen, but Olofsson has top 6 skill in terms of scoring and can step up in the lineup if, God forbid, Landeskog has injury issues that come back. He got paid $500,000 more than he got paid in Vegas last year, and he scored 15 goals in 56 games. So that's not bad. If you prorate that, that's over 20 goals. Getting a 20-goal scorer for $1.5 million is not bad.
No, that's not bad at all. I want to bring up that, and I think rightly so, that this PTO with Milan Lucic, it's getting a lot of headlines, as it should. I mean, you want to Google.
I was surprised.
Yeah, I would say this. If this were Major League Baseball, he would not be getting this chance based on their domestic violence policy and everything else.
I'm not going to equate it, Russ, to Trevor Bauer, but the parallels are sort of similar, because Bauer got cleared in terms of any kind of criminality.
Right.
But the optics of what happened with him and the optics of what happened to Lucic, or what he was involved in, you can't ignore. So no. I'm a little surprised. I'm surprised with St. Louis too, because there's really no connection between him and Doug Armstrong.
I mean, you do have. The question is, what about Montgomery?
Yeah.
Did they? I guess the big question.
Wasn't he brought back to Boston when Montgomery was still the coach? And then
I have to check, but I believe I believe so. Yeah, I think I may be wrong on that, and people can certainly correct me. But if I'm looking for a connection point there, that is a possible one for sure. So, and again, it's on a PTO. He gets to, but yeah, certainly coming off of that. Now I know it was, if I'm remembering, it was spousal, I think, right?
Yeah. And charges were eventually dropped.
His wife was fairly quick to drop them at the time, if I recall. If I'm wrong, again, please correct me. But
it eventually happened.
Eventually,
yeah. So Again, it's a circumstance here where, again, it is a PTO. It almost reads as a favor of sorts.
It does read that way.
To
Definitely.
me, when I saw it, as in, can you give him at least a look in camp to see if he can contribute?
I just feel like there's players that are more worthy of that these days.
But as we always say, it depends on what usually bringing a player on a PTO if you think he might be able to provide something that you don't currently have, but it's up to the player to prove that they still got the gas in the tank to do it.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the thing. I mean, he was slow in Calgary.
He was.
And I mean, there was that people were scratching their head that when he came back to Boston, now it's like, I mean, this almost strikes to me like Carl Brewer coming back with the Leafs when he was like 47. Right. So I don't know. I mean, it does strike to me as a favor, and I'd be shocked if he gets a contract.
Now, Mike, we'll finish with this. I don't know if you saw it. I don't subscribe to The Athletic, so I didn't. Maybe Anthony saw it with the Leafs and the NHL front office confidence rankings. Apparently, the Leafs didn't do so well on that. Did you happen to see it or hear about it?
I didn't read it. I didn't see it yet. I'll now have to. But is this rating their management or is this rating?
Yeah, I'm looking at an article on the Hockey Writers. I'll give you a quote.
Okay.
The quote says, with how the Atlantic is sizing up, confidence is dwindling in regards to how far this team can go right now because of mistakes from the past regime, aided by some missteps from the current one. It feels like an era wasted.
Okay. I mean, I slightly disagree. I mean, okay, you can't ignore the errors of the previous administration.
No, you can't ignore it.
Yeah, I mean, not only signings, not only trading a first-round pick to get rid of Patrick Marleau, but that was a contract that Lou Lamoriello signed. So Dubas was cleaning up his garbage. The draft record of Kyle Dubas, as much as I like him personally as a guy, but his draft record. I mean, the 2020 draft where they had 12 picks, nobody has played a game.
That's bad. I'm going to say being in that business, that's bad.
Yeah, unfortunately, the first round pick, it was a tragedy that Rodion Amarov died. But like their second round pick, their third round pick, they went back to Sweden and Finland rather than sticking around. So it was a complete bust, and they traded a lot of draft picks. Now, the one thing I can say about Treliving in terms of ranking them, okay, they traded draft picks like Tampa, like Florida, but they got players for them. And they got players with term back, so it's not like they traded them for rentals. So. And if they're looking at this through the prism of, well, Mitch Marner left, I'm of the assertion, and I'll go out on a limb, I think this team, maybe not in terms of points during the regular season, I think they will be better when it counts than they were the last few years. Why? Because Mitch Marner was one of the players who mailed it in and did not show up when it counted. And that may be sort of vindictive, but the record speaks for itself. It really does.
It does.
Yeah, I mean that part's we'll find out about. And again, one last thing, I'm putting everybody on social media on notice for these pumpkin spice posts. If I see them, you're going to feel it for me because
block them.
It's way too early. I'm sorry. It just
the minute you start. I'm now getting to the point now where it's starting to feel like. The minute you start knocking on the door at the start of the academic school year, it's like the excuse to unleash the pumpkin spice.
It seems that
as
way.
An educator myself, and in these circumstances, the rule is September 1st.
Right, I'm okay with that.
Which is the globally accepted date of the beginning of fall. Obviously, we don't talk about the fall solstice on the 21st, but I think September 1, even if it's still warm out. It's September.
Right.
In the words of referee Mills Lane, I'll allow it.
all I can tell you is that I remember going to the Leafs rookie tournament in London, Ontario, and this was 6-7 years ago, maybe 8. And they were just starting to, and it was like September the 10th or something like that, right before preseason. They were just starting to release pumpkin spice at that point. It was the second week of September,
which was normal.
Yeah, now you go to a friggin' Wegmans here, and they've got the autumn spice stuff in the
Wegmans probably has a whole aisle of it.
Holy shit!
By the way, I'm gonna applaud Wawa, who I occasionally pop in for coffee. They have not yet unleashed pumpkin spice.
Okay, good for them.
Being said, kids are going to be coming back to school by the 25th here in Philly.
So you think that's when it's going to start?
I have a sneaking suspicion that is where the spice will flow.
What is this, Dune?
Exactly. For us, it's a massive desert of taste. So there you go.
Yeah. All right. That's it. That's it. The off post. We'll catch everybody next time.
Take care, everybody.